I want you to take a look at these pictures for me. Anything jump out at you?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're in costumes.
Right. They're in costumes. These are all celebrities who have been called out, criticized, and condemned for cultural appropriation. Has anyone here ever called someone out for cultural appropriation? You too? You have? You have?
Yep.
Has anybody here ever thought twice about wearing something or doing something, even cooking something, out of fear of being accused of appropriation? You have?
Yes.
Yeah, what was it?
My daughter had braids and she wanted me to get braids that were just like hers.
Why her but not you?
She's half black and half white.
Okay.
And so I just think that some things should stick with those cultures.
Well, no matter whether you believe it's harmful or you think people should just be allowed to do what they want, there is no doubt this is a hot button topic that people are passionate about. Dr. Neil Lester, a professor of English at Arizona State University, right?
I am, yes.
And you've published, lectured, and taught extensively the area of African American studies. What do you think about appropriation? Do you think this is a real thing, something that people need to be cognizant of? And if so, why?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, because if we in fact are trying to look at the humanity of other people, and we are trying to live in a place where we are trying to be respectful and mindful of folks, then we need to be aware of things that are important to other cultures that don't necessarily look like us or share the same values. So it is a thing, and people need to be aware of.
Can anybody appropriate?
Anybody can appropriate, yes.
Not just white people.
Absolutely. Appropriation is intersectional. So old people can appropriate youth culture. Youth culture can appropriate old folks. People who are not incarcerated can impersonate, prisoners or those who are incarcerated. Men appropriate women's attire for the sake of funny and mocking. So absolutely anybody can do it, and everybody on some level may have flirted with it.
Okay, but a lot of the time that people that I've seen are called out for this, it's not that they were making fun or mocking in some way. It was just that they had adopted a fashion or a style or whatever.
I would say that's a performance. So if somebody's culture and somebody's identity becomes a performance, then it's reductive. So if you're reducing, for example, say the civil rights movement to an afro, and you wear that, or you wear dreadlock wigs, that Rastafarians may wear, you do that because it's edgy, because it's cool, but ultimately because it's not you, and you're getting some kind of cultural capital from that by doing it.
And who's hurt by that?
Well, it's not a matter of who's hurt by it, it's who's being disrespected by it.
Well, who's being disrespected by it?
A whole culture of people whose identities are wrapped in whatever you're dressing into and can then take off.
Amala, you don't agree?
I don't, no.
You think worrying about appropriation is a waste of time?
I think not only is it somewhat a waste of time, but it's nearly impossible. You just mentioned there are nearly hundreds of ways that one could appropriate somebody else's culture or their livelihood. And to expect any one human being to keep on top of that throughout their entire life, I think, is an unrealistic ask. And I think imitation is a form of flattery. I appreciate my food by eating it. I appreciate the hair that I wear by wearing it, by putting on the clothes that I wear. And every single item around us in this room could probably be attributed to a certain culture. Do we have to constantly worry about what culture we gain things from?
Does intention have anything to do with
Well,
it?
I guess I didn't hear anything about anybody worrying about it. What I hear about when I think about and talk about cultural appropriation is people becoming more aware of it. We could say the same thing about racism, sexism, homophobia. Just because you can't solve it and don't see it at every corner doesn't mean we shouldn't be aware of it and trying to address it.
Wow, do you really put those on the same level?
I absolutely
Racism
do.
and sexism, you put it on the same level as cultural appropriation?
That's exactly.
So if somebody wears their hair like you're wearing it, you put that on the same level as racism?
Absolutely. Wow. I put that on the same level as white supremacy, because white supremacy is intersectional. Read Audre Lorde. It's like, and here's what I'm saying. That's why I started by saying this is about humanity or the lack of humanity. When we're putting on someone else's culture, that is somebody else's identity. So when you're talking about being worried about stuff, I'm talking about this in the context of power and history.
You're Brittany, right? Yes. Do you think black people appropriate?
I think it's possible for Black people to appropriate a different culture just because Black culture is the only culture that exists, and every culture has their own boundaries or things that they find offensive and things they want other cultures to respect.
How many of y'all agree with the doctor here that cultural appropriation is on the same level as racism or sexism? How many of you agree that it's serious like that? How many of you say, no, I think that's overblown? Okay, most of you think that's overblown. Is it they just don't get it?
Well, when we talk about systemic racism, which many of us started talking about after George Floyd's murder, we started seeing the ways in which white supremacy is embedded in everything, and cultural appropriation is about that. It's not only about that, but it is about that. People don't walk into a space and are just raced. You are race and. You're not just raced. So there's race and gender, there's race and religion, there's race and sexuality, there's race and body type. So all of that becomes embedded when we talk about systemic racism. And that's what's missing from conversations about cultural appropriation. We only want to focus on race, but not one person in this room is just raced. That's what I challenge. And that's why age becomes part of this. That's why gender becomes part of this. Dressing up as women and thinking that's funny. That's cultural appropriation. That's mocking women, and we make lots of money doing that.
So what is the difference between appreciation, admiration, adulation, inclusion, and appropriation? And how posting a picture in a prom dress resulted in death threats? We'll talk about that when we come back.
I found a whole entire aisle of cheap out dresses. I thought it was beautiful and I bought it.
You actually got death threats?
I did.
Who gets to be the one whose rules are applied to all of society?
Kim Kardashian has definitely been accused of cultural appropriation. She has literally changed her entire aesthetic to fit a Black woman. One of the most obvious ways is when she started wearing cornrows, which is a Black cultural style. So when she wore it, people thought that this was the most trendy style they had ever seen. She started being seen as the creator of that hairstyle. It's really not fair because Black women have historically been called ghetto for having cornrows, as that is one of the staple styles in our culture.
Well, before the break, I asked if it was ever okay for certain groups or ethnicities to wear or emulate another style or mannerisms. Now, Kim Kardashian is part Armenian. Is it okay for her to wear cornrows?
I personally think that it depends on what boundaries that culture has set. So I can speak for Black culture. The reason why, some of us are offended and have problems with white women wearing braids is because it's documented. Black women are getting fired from their jobs for wearing braids. We are called ghetto. We are not seen as professional with our natural cultural hairstyles that are part of Black culture. And then when white women wear them, they are glorified, praised, and even sometimes have the credit attributed to them. So that discrepancy is where the issue comes into play.
If I could respond to that, I think you can speak for yourself as an individual as far as whether or not you are offended by something, but you can't speak on behalf of the entire Black culture. There are plenty of Black people who watched what Kim Kardashian did and thought the braids looked absolutely fine. And again, I do think imitating is flattery. She didn't step up and say that she's invented the hairstyle. If people attribute that to her, that's something that you do on an individual basis.
I feel like it's important to understand the difference between imitating and actually appropriating. So imitating is like, you like my nails, you go do it, you copy it. Imitating, you like my shoes, buy the same shoes. Sure. Appropriating is when you are copying something of a culture that is not yours, and it's inappropriate. You are disrespecting the boundary that culture has set.
If I copied your shoes tomorrow because I liked them, would that not be appropriation?
I have not set a boundary against you about the shoes I wear. I don't face discrimination or racism because of the shoes that I wear.
So if I, as a biracial, half-Black woman, go to Kim Kardashian and say, you know what, that's not a boundary that I've set for you. You may wear cornrows. And I am essentially a Black person who has told her I don't have that boundary. Is it then wrong for her to wear the braids the next day?
that comes into play. If you do that, you're going to ignore there's countless documentation of a lot of Black women being like discriminated and experiencing racism because of braids. So by doing that, you're kind of just dismissing and ignoring the Black women that are struggling with this issue, especially because you have to think Kim Kardashian has an extremely large platform. So what she does, her fans see as law and see as she can do no wrong. So if she is seen as something as being that it's okay, they're going to copy her, which will.
Well, what do the rest of y'all think? You guys wait. Go ahead.
I think the existence of a double standard that is unfairly being applied to Black women about their hairstyles doesn't necessitate that Kim Kardashian, we need a rule that she's not allowed, that all white women are not allowed to wear this hairstyle. Like Amla said, another Black woman could not be offended by that, and who gets to be the one whose rules are applied to all of society.
Because you know firsthand what it's like to be called out, threatened, and abused online for appropriating another culture. What happened?
It was my prom, and I went to a vintage thrift shop. I found a whole entire aisle of cheapao dresses, which was the name of the dress that I had worn. There were all different colors and styles, and I found one that had fit me well. I thought it was beautiful, and I bought it. And I wore it to my prom. I posted about it on Twitter, and I immediately received backlash following a specific comment saying that my culture is not your prom dress.
So you got backlash for
wearing the dress, yes.
and it said that you were appropriating a culture?
Yes,
And you actually got death threats?
I did. I got called all sorts of names. I got death threats. I got people threatening to send things to my high school. It was scary.
That doesn't make common sense to me. And I think that people in that culture don't feel that way.
No, I was actually personally invited to fly out to China to go to their Qipao festival as their guest of honor, because they loved the fact that someone from America was taking in a part of their culture and showing their appreciation for it. I wasn't appropriating it. I wore it because it was a beautiful dress and I appreciated it.
I've researched this a fair amount, and it really is interesting that people from the culture oftentimes are supportive of this and think it's inclusive and puts that forward, and they're flattered by it. And those outside the culture are terribly offended.
I've talked to people who've lived there. They will literally hand out these dresses to people. They love seeing other people wear them. And the only people that were, well, not the only people, but mostly the only people who were upset at me were the ones who were not part of the culture.
Yeah.
Are they selling the dresses or giving them to you?
Sorry?
Are they selling the dresses? You say you go out and they give you these dresses. Are they giving them to you or selling them to you?
I mean,
Because that's a huge difference.
yeah. But
It's a
regardless, they are
commodity,
okay
and
with
you're an
us wearing
audience for
them.
that.
I wasn't mocking the culture. I wasn't doing anything wrong. However, the people who thought I was had nothing to do with the culture at all, which is a problem.
Next, a man hits the street to find out who gets offended by cultural appropriation and who finds it funny, who finds it okay. You might be surprised. We'll take a look after the break.
The only people who are actually offended by cultural appropriation don't really have anything else of meaning going on in their lives, it seems.
Friends, we are at UCLA talking to college students about my costume for Halloween. Let's do it. Do you like my outfit? No. No? Why not? How you doing? You like my costume? You are. It is not Chinese Awareness Month, but Halloween is coming up. You like my outfit?
I mean, not particularly.
I think that is cultural appropriation.
It strikes me as pretty insensitive.
Does my outfit make you mad?
No, good.
Good?
Yeah.
Tear down.
Hell down.
Do you have to be Chinese to wear this?
You don't have to. Anybody can wear.
Are you Chinese?
Yeah, I'm half Chinese.
Oh, okay. Do you get offended by this costume?
No, I mean, like, it doesn't bother me. I feel like if you let everything get to you like that, you know, you're not gonna get to the bigger problems in life.
Okay, what do you guys think? Yes, ma'am.
In a multicultural society, I don't think that the boundaries between cultures are that rigid. I think they're somewhat fluid. And so, you know, at the end of the day, we're talking about hairstyles. We're talking about clothing. There's so many bigger fish to fry. You know, we have this grievance culture. Everybody has a grievance about something. And, you know, I just think that it's really not that big of an issue.
How many of you agree with that? Okay. Most of you do. Yes, sir.
It seems to be an American issue. My wife recently, my beautiful wife, who knows pretty much everything.
Good catch on that.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. She
Good
recently
catch.
wanted to buy a kimono because she thought they were beautiful. So she checked in with a Japanese friend of hers and, you know, to make sure that she wasn't participating in cultural appropriation. And her Japanese friend said that it would be celebrating her culture.
The fact that we can share styles and clothing and food is a very beautiful thing to be
but
celebrated.
But sharing and then having somebody else get credit for it. See, that's what the issue is. The issue is I've done my homework and you're going to copy it and the teacher's going to praise you for doing the homework. That's what cultural appropriation is.
Okay, well, Will Witt is a former Prager University personality and current editor-in-chief at the Florida Standard. He joins us virtually. Will, what prompted you to make that video?
Well, really, I made that video to prove anti-white ivory tower professors like the one in your studio wrong. I mean, this video and the others that I've made like it with Native Americans, with Mexicans, with the Chinese you just watched, are irrefutable evidence that people like that professor are exactly wrong on cultural appropriation. And if we want to go back and we want to talk about the hairstyles and things, just bringing this up, I mean, I've seen people get offended by braids and say, oh, you know, braids are a black people thing and white people can't wear braids. It's called a Dutch braid. It was from back in Nordic times, the old Nordic times, with white people, with Vikings, would wear braids, yet people want to come and claim that it's some part of their culture now. No, you can't claim that something is just a part of your culture either. It's for people to share and celebrate and use so you can actually have a society that is cohesive and works together as a melting pot, not all these different groups that can't work together because everyone's so offended. The only people who are actually offended by cultural appropriation don't really have anything else of meaning going on in their lives, it seems.
Yeah.
Well, that's rich.
You say people who get offended by
rich.
cultural appropriation are people mostly not from that culture. Has that been your experience, whatever the culture was?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, one of the most important videos that I ever did with PragerU is when I went to the Navajo Indian Reservation in Window Rock, Arizona. And all of these Navajos that I talked to didn't want other people to get offended for them on their behalf. They wanted to feel responsible for their own culture. They didn't want someone coming in, for lack of a better word, white knighting them and saying, hey, we need to come here and save you. You know, all these people wearing headdresses and things or a feather in their hair, we need to come and save you. They didn't want that. They wanted people to come and say Geronimo. They wanted planes named the Apache helicopter. They wanted the Washington Redskins as their sports team to celebrate their culture. They didn't want other people getting offended on their behalf. It's a thing created by elitist white people who don't really ever talk to these people in these cultures.
All right, well, next, can dressing up as your favorite cartoon or any kind of character cause offense? Well, for some, it does. My next guest knows all about that, and we'll talk to her after the break.
Cultural appropriation goes back a long way. In music, when people accused Elvis of exploiting black people to make his music, people talked about it in movies from the days when Mickey Rooney played a Japanese man in the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. Think about movies today. The first West Side Story was mainly Caucasian people playing Hispanics. And then Steven Spielberg manages to make the same movie. He puts Hispanic people in, but then he takes all kinds of flack because they're not the right kind of Hispanics. Lin-Manuel Miranda, when he did that movie, The Heights, he was accused of not using the appropriate Latinos for it. Some people just can't be made happy.
Well, that was Mark Drought, who joins us virtually. He is a columnist and former professor, and he says America doesn't have one specific culture. it's a blend. So, Mark, you've been listening to everything we've been talking about. What would you like to add?
It's a slippery slope from protecting your own culture to becoming a bit ridiculous about it, where it actually becomes an embarrassment. And I've seen all kinds of examples of this. You know, you see it in movies. Tom Hanks recently apologized because he played a gay man in Philadelphia. Well, you know, does that mean only gay people can play gay people? It's called acting because people become something they're not. That's what an actor is. And if you look back at the music business, you know, granted, it's a bad deal if people profit from black music and don't give any credit for it. But does that mean Eric Clapton can't play the blues? If a white man can't play black music, does that mean Andre Watts, a black concert pianist, shouldn't be playing Mozart because he's not Viennese?
I think you could acknowledge it goes both ways in all cultures. And Mia, you were called out for appropriating and fetishizing an anime character that you admire, right?
Yes.
And you were cosplaying. Now, tell me about that. How did that play out for you?
Well, I decided to cosplay a character named Asuka from an anime called Evangelion. And as soon as I put on the cosplay, people said that I was fetishizing her, more specifically her cosplay when she was in her school uniform. I was told that I was sexualizing her and that I was fetishizing her in that school uniform because I was black and not Japanese. Now, I was just cosplaying her in her school uniform, but I wasn't doing anything sexual. I wasn't doing any like provocative poses. I was just pretending to be the character. But for some reason, I think because people have preconceived notions of how black women are, people automatically fetishize us and sexualize us. So when they saw me in that cosplay, they were like, oh no, this is wrong. You're in this school uniform, you're being disrespectful.
I don't know that world that you're talking about. I've learned about it since you got involved in the show. So I don't know what the parameters and the boundaries are.
Right.
But I think in this life you got to pick your battles. Oh, yeah. And I really wonder, because of the things that we have to deal with, why someone would invest so much energy into something that you're doing for fun. And I think we always seem to judge other people by their behavior and ourselves by our intentions. I guess because we don't know other people's intentions. But you got to pick your battles and your battlefields. And I really wonder why someone, more than someone, would get so invested, particularly in a fantasy character, especially when you weren't. And I've looked at the images. It clearly wasn't something that was provocative, playing into pedophilia or anything of that sort. But you took some heat.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the people who did attack me, I think the reason why they attacked me was not to protect said culture, but a lot of people engage in bad faith just to attack people. And within the anime and cosplay community, there is a lot of racist people who don't want to see black people in that community. And so they will take advantage of people's lack of understanding of this topic and weaponize it against people of color. And so what I think people need to think about more when they try to correct people for appropriating is, are we educated on this topic that we're trying to correct people on appropriating? And also, if that boundary is there, Why was it set there? Why was that boundary set there? It's not that there are rules set and like this is a whole game and, oh, you broke the rules, you did that. It's how what you're doing impacts other people. And I noticed that the people who were attacking me, I don't think they really had Japanese people's best interest in mind, because in the process of attacking me, they were negatively stereotyping Japanese people. I just think that some people engage in these battles, you know, they're choosing the battles like exactly how you're saying, in bad faith, to have this weird gotcha moment. A lot of people weaponize social justice to hurt others.
Yeah, that's a big question. Look, it's not just hair, clothes, costumes, and entertainment that people are calling out for appropriation. It's also the food you eat and cook. We'll talk about that after the break.
There is a fine line between appreciation and appropriation as it relates to food. Specifically, TikTok creators sharing recipes from different cultures. I think it's important to give credit where credit is due. The problem is repackaging them and making them seem like they never existed in the first place.
So raise your hand if you've ever eaten Mexican food cooked by an American. Or sushi by someone who isn't Japanese. Is that appropriation?
No.
No?
No.
Well, Angela, you say not only is food being appropriated, but it needs to stop. Tell me what you mean.
So when it comes to food, it's not necessarily that people of another culture can't enjoy other people's cuisines. That's not the point I'm making in terms of cultural appropriation. What I'm saying is the idea of profiting off of that. So like I mentioned, TikTok creators, for example. I recently wrote an article, I'm a food writer for a website called The Takeout. I wrote an article about TikTok creators sharing a specific drink called, well, they called it spa water, but it's actually agua fresca, which is something that comes from Mexican culture, Latino culture. It's a drink that is water, sugar, and like blended fruits and vegetables. So the issue there is that white creators on TikTok are sharing this particular drink. They're profiting off of it in the sense of they're gaining attention from it, they're gaining views, and they're also giving it a new name. This drink already existed, it's part of a culture. I feel like it's very simple to give credit where credit's due.
Mm-hmm. And compensation.
And compensation to who?
Well, for one thing, let's think about Jack Daniels and the enslaved person that created that recipe. It would be nice to let his family benefit from that rather than having Jack Daniels' family become millionaires.
So they would have to track down the creator of Agua Fresca, hope that they still have family alive, and give them some of the money they've made off the TikToks they've created?
I don't think it's specifically that. It's not, I'm at least me personally.
You don't think they need to be compensated?
I'm saying that on TikTok in this particular sense, because social media plays a role in it. That's how things are shared nowadays. If this particular white creator is gaining, 2 million views from their recipe of spa water, knowing that it comes from a specific culture, I just think that's not right. I don't understand why that can't be acknowledged. She could have done her research. I mean, I know
So
she
anytime
did.
we cook something, we need to research everything about it.
I think when you share it online, you have a responsibility, yes.
And if you're claiming it, it's yours. That's why when people create things, they do research to see what else is out there. You can only go so far to say, I didn't know. But once you know, you can't unknow that. That's what I'm saying. So there has to be credit. And we're not necessarily talking about there has to be reparations. We're talking about respect and humanity for somebody from whom you've stolen. Cultural appropriation is not criminal, but it is ethical. But people have a right to make a decision about what is ethical. And once you know, you can't unknow that, Dr. Phil.
One of the things that bothers me is when I see this happen on the internet. I mean, they just attack them, and that doesn't help. And I mean, they really go after them.
But where might that be coming from, though? Where might that be coming from? Anger is an expression of something.
Hurt,
so where
fear,
might
and
that,
frustration.
exactly. And if we talk about this, and that's what seems to be missing again from the conversation, is where's the history of this? And all of this is about education. All of this is about education, but I would like to think that each person here is a lifelong learner. And once you know this, you can't unknow this. So this is not about, which is what was brought up earlier about how are you supposed to know this? And nobody's trying to ask anybody to know everything. In fact, that's why we're still learning this. But if somebody has told you that this bothers me, the response should not be, well, it shouldn't. And I don't think anybody here is trying to say anybody is speaking on behalf of one. What I am saying is that we can educate it and learn more about what we are talking about so that we don't do it again.
Next, I have a final question after the break. We'll be right back.
I want to talk about this one really quick too. It's not your place to understand everything of a different culture, but that doesn't give you the green light or an excuse to still do it. For example, if you rob a bank because you don't understand the rules, are the police gonna be like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it? No, they're gonna throw you behind in jail because it's still wrong. Just because you don't understand a rule or a culture does not give you the right to do it anyway. Period.
Well, so today we've been discussing cultural appropriation, whether it's harmful and whether it's gone too far. And, I just wonder if we've gotten too sensitive. And I worry also about what the reaction is whenever somebody calls somebody out. And look, every situation is different. Irish people don't have a problem. I'm of Irish descent. Don't have a problem when non-Irish people celebrate St. Patrick's Day. But then black people say, well, you've not been oppressed. So you don't have the same sensitivities that someone else might have. But I wrote down things that when I was researching this, Hispanics were complaining about hoop earrings. Hawaiians were really complaining when surfing was added to the Olympics because they were taking surfing from the Hawaiian population. And I couldn't find who was the first person to surf, whether it was the Hawaiian Islands or somewhere else. I couldn't find the beginning of that. My biggest problem that I have with it is everywhere I could find this called out on social media was public shaming and attacking. I could find very few times where somebody would send a message and say, hey, just wanted to mention that you might want to think about the fact that this comes from somewhere and you might want to share some appreciation or acknowledgement. It was vicious and hurtful and shaming. And I hate to see that because we seem to have this call out, cancel culture and attack culture. And I really wonder, I've said before, we say a lot of things on a keyboard. I wonder if we would say that to somebody if we were in the elevator with them. I think you were really attacked and felt bad for your prom dress and you for your anime. And I just wonder if people took even 30 seconds to know either one of you, if they would feel that way and say that to you. And I just hope in this country we can slow down enough to try and first understand and second be understood. That would be a good place to start. It's just my thoughts. I want to thank all of my guests for being here today for what I feel was an important discussion. I really want to thank my audience for participating in all of this. Doctor, thank you for coming and sharing your perspectives. Reggie, thank you so much. Amala, thank you. Thank you for your help. Switching gears, up next, the unique way two best friends enjoy spending time together, and it doesn't involve shopping or happy hour. Find out what it is next.